All right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon from whichever part of the world it is that you're joining us from. Karibuni sana. Hope you're well. This beautiful 14th day of February, 2025. Welcome to the Valentine's edition of the Afriforex Day Analysis. This beautiful day. Hope you're well. Hope you've had a good time on the chats, and of course in everything else that you've been up to this week. Finally glad to see the end of another week, and we do thank God for life. So for the sake of guys who are new to me, to us, John Bobo is my name. I'm a trader with Afriforex. Afriforex is a trading unit, so it's not a one-man show. We also do have the rest of the team here. So in case you do have any questions, feel free to ask them. Of course, on the chat box, the team will get back to you, but I will also be looking at the questions in the chat box as well, but towards the very tail end of this session. But also don't wait until the very end to ask your questions. Unfortunately, some of you do that, and when the webinar ends, you see questions in the chat box. So make sure that you do ask them even as the session does actually end up progressing on, and the team will definitely end up getting back to you. So we're going to jump straight into it. So we'll start off by looking at the watch list, where we always start. So you can't see the watch list for today. So the 14th of February, you can't see what the watch list is going to be looking like today in comparison to what we did end up having yesterday. So we do have one change so far, which is the New Zealand dollar, which has joined the buy side of things. So hopefully you can end up taking note of that. So we can end up looking at the currency pairs that we did have yesterday that unfortunately did not make it to our watch list. Let's see what we can learn from it, of course, to end up bettering our trading. So the Australian dollar against the New Zealand dollar, for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. So you can't see the three areas that Mitch had pointed out right there. The market seemed to have been in some sort of a range between these two regions here. So in the morning, price was here. We're expecting the pullback to come in, at least somewhere as close as possible within here before we do look for the buys. But consider the market just came back in somewhere within this region. Seems that these prices were good enough for the buyers, and you can see that the market did push to the upside quite aggressively. And this was during the US session. If you do look at the times, this was at exactly 4. So the price was within a buyer's region at 4. Price took off to the upside, tapped within that region, but you definitely did need to manage your trade at the top right there, because you can't clearly see that the sellers also within that region did do some pushback of the buyers who approached that region. So the next one, this is the euro against the New Zealand dollar. So for this one, yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities as well. So you can see the three areas that Mitch had pointed out, and also an illustration of what to expect. So you can see in the morning, price was somewhere within this region here. We're expecting price to possibly end up pushing up, or maybe once it did push up, maybe on the pullback, maybe some sort of a hold within this area here before we do actually end up looking for the buys. But unfortunately, price just couldn't hold within that region. And you can see that price technically did hold there, but the buyers were just not interested. And you can see that much later on, it broke to the downside, tapped within that area and started coming down. But also something to do with NZD news events that came out early today morning. So possibly that strength, maybe we will see that coming in even as we continue progressing on with today, and of course moving into the various sessions. So last but not least, we do have the Great British Pound against the New Zealand dollar. So for this one, yesterday we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities as well. So you can see the three areas that Mitch had pointed out, also illustrations of what to expect. So in the morning, price was here. We're expecting either the market to come back in within here. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. It broke to the upside, but we just couldn't get a proper pullback coming back in within here. But you can see that the market really struggled to hold to the upside. And of course, even making higher highs and higher lows just couldn't end up happening. And today, you can see that the market has come to the downside. And of course, once again, that has to do with this New Zealand dollar news events that came out at midnight. So some strength that's already starting to come in on the NZDs. So we'll see whether that ends up being the case for the remainder of the day. So that's pretty much it in terms of the currency pairs for review. So I guess we can end up looking at a couple of screenshots that we did end up getting from you guys. So we'll start off with this one from Alvin. So this is on the euro against the US dollar. Good to see that you got a very, very good selling opportunity on this one. And I can see that the sell right there was quite a precise entry, quite professional, if I do say so. And of course, once the market started to move down in your favor, I can see that you did bring your stop loss just within that region there, but also it could be somewhere within this area at around 0.04170, somewhere within that area, because in case the market pulls back, it might come back in within this area, just to make sure that you do secure a bit more. But in terms of entry, this is very, very good. And I can see that there was also a sell limit high up there, possibly missed, maybe as you're expecting the market to come up a bit higher, but unfortunately it didn't. But at least you did get the sell on that one. But on this one, you did miss out on, and I can see you put right there, missed limit. So guess you're expecting price to pull back in within that region. It just came shy of that area and came to the downside. But at least you did get the sell on the euro against the US dollar. So for this one, just unlucky. It does happen on the charts sometimes, but that was a very, very good attempt. So shout out to you for that, Alvin. And of course, keep up the good work. We're happy to see good progress in your trading. So we also did get a screenshot from Andre. So this is on the euro against the US dollar. So I guess Alvin got the sell coming down. Then you got the buys going up. A handful of buying opportunities down within here. I can see that you actually took the market all the way to the very top before the sellers did actually end up starting to push to the downside. So that was really good. So shout out to you for that, Andre. Good to see that you're also doing well on the charts. In terms of where you got the buys, this was very, very good. And of course, in terms of exits, also spectacular. So keep up the good work as well, Andre, and keep those screenshots coming. So last but not least, we did get a screenshot from Christine. This is on gold. So I can see that you got a number of buying opportunities on this one. So down within this area here, on the market pulled back in within this area, also some more buying opportunities. And I can see that your stop losses for all your trades are somewhere within here. So this was some really, really good trading. So keep up the good work. Hopefully we are still hanging on to this one. I know gold has continued to move up much, much higher. So if you're hanging on to them, shout out to you for that. And you must be in the money and you must be happy. So hopefully you're just managing those trades as the market continues to move in your favor. So shout out to Alvin, Andre, Christine. Thank you so much for your screenshots. Remember, guys, if you do get any trades, feel free to send them in to us. Our contact details are there in the video description. We'd be more than happy to see what you guys are up to, give you the much needed shout out. And of course, if we do see something that you can end up improving, then we'll also end up pointing that out for you as well. And also make sure that you do reach out to us with the same contact details. In case you do have any issues, we'll see how best we can end up helping you. So shifting gears into matters today. So you can see the watch list right there, Friday the 14th. This is what we're going to be basically watching out for. So we'll start off with the Australian dollar pairs. Then move on to the euros, the Great British Pound, and the New Zealand dollar pairs. Mix and match them up with the currency pairs on the sell side. Then we'll finish off with the indices and the commodities. No change on that front as well. So like I pointed out, the only change that we do have is the New Zealand dollar. So starting us off, we have the Australian dollar against the Swiss franc. So for this one, yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. So you can see the three areas that Mitch had pointed out. So in the morning price was here. We're expecting to possibly see something, to tell us that the big boys were actually interested in looking for buys within this area. Unfortunately, we couldn't get that there. The market came down lower, breached this region to the downside. And of course, this being the aggressive area that we did have yesterday, once price did breach this region to the downside, there was definitely no trade for us. So for this one, let's see what happens today. Yesterday, the Swiss franc pairs pulled back aggressively. There were some CPIs that had come out for the CHF, which did end up bringing in some strength, although the CPIs actually came out negative. So we'll see whether we'll get that weakness possibly coming in today. So these are the three areas we will be watching out for. So hopefully you can end up taking note of them. Let's see if we can possibly end up getting the market pulling back in within here. If we do get something like that, I think we could potentially end up looking for buys there, but also watching out for the times that we do keep on pointing out. So 11, 4, and 5:30, depending on where the market is, possibly could get a good buy there. But also remember that the market can also come back in all the way down to within this region here. So let's focus on that region right there. The market has just come back up within this support region. I think this must have incited a lot of people to look for the sells. If it's back in within here, I'm guessing these buyers within this region might actually end up picking it up, and we could find the price coming in back within this region. And of course, we'll need to do some very good money management there even if you will be targeting areas much higher. So watch out for that. Remember the red SNR at the bottom in case the market breaks that region to the downside. Unfortunately, there will be no trade for us. So the next one, this is the Australian dollar against the Japanese yen. So for this one, yesterday, we're also trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. So you can see the three areas that Mitch had pointed out, also an illustration of what to expect. So in the morning, price was here. We're expecting to possibly see the market maybe calm down, maybe tap here, come back up, and maybe possibly end up getting some buying opportunities. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And you can see that the market broke to the downside, came back in all the way till within this region right here. The buyers showed up. And you can see some sort of a probe that happened within this region here, came down. And of course, you can see that off this area, possibly could have been some buys, but unfortunately, the market hasn't really gone that far. So for this one, let's see what happens. The levels are the same. So that means the plan is exactly the same as what we did end up having yesterday. So we want to get our buys as close to the bottom as we can. So let's see if we can get the price possibly coming back in as close as possible within this region. And if that does end up happening, then of course, watching out for the times, then I think we could potentially end up getting some very good buying opportunities. So watch out for that. Watch out for this region right here. In the event that price does end up coming back in within here, we're not too sure whether it might be a retest of this area because you can see that it broke to the downside. So you will definitely need to do some very good money management within this area here. And of course, if we do break to the upside, then definitely for those of you that are very good at trading, you could end up adding in a trade or two within that region there. But also remembering the red SNR, that's going to be the last area where we will be trying or attempting our last buying opportunities. So the next one is the Australian dollar against the US dollar. So for this one, yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. So you can see the three regions right here that had been pointed out. So in the morning, price was here. And of course, we're expecting maybe the pullback to either come back in within this area. This was a region of interest for us, and price did come back in within this area, tapped there. You can see that in the morning, price was here. All through the London session, the market was on the pullback phase. Then during the US session, you can see from around 5:30, that's when the market actually started making a move to the upside. So this one also serves as a good example of, what we keep on pointing out. Watch out for where the market is, within the various market opening times. You could easily end up getting a good trade, just by watching out for the times. And I mean, even if your timing is not really that great, the fact that you're getting the prices, within good locations and everything aligns even in terms of the timing, you could actually end up getting a very good trade. So for this one, let's see what happens if we could potentially end up getting a pullback. I know there's a lot of weakness on the USDs. They are really going. And of course, even silver, gold, we should expect them to continue moving. Quite a number of news events that are going to be coming out today. So let's wait and see what happens. So for this one, let's wait and see if we can get the pullback. Hopefully, we could get the pullback coming back in within here. And of course, if that does end up happening, this is an area of interest, especially considering the fact that the market broke to the upside or the pullback. If we get the market back in within here, I think we could get some very good buys to lift to the upside. So let's see what happens on this one. In terms of looking for the buys now, it's not the best of ideas. There's a seller's region here. They could easily react. Maybe you could find the market coming back in here. You just need to be patient. Or if that doesn't happen, then I guess we'll have to end up waiting for a breach of this region to the upside, something similar to what we were expecting yesterday. If the market breaks to the upside, and hopefully we get the pullback back in within here, then I think we could get a very good buying opportunity on this one. So watch out for that. Also remember to watch out for the region at the bottom. That's going to be the last area where we will be attempting our last and aggressive buying opportunities. So the next one, this is the Australian dollar against the Canadian dollar. So for this one, yesterday, we're also expecting to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. So you can see the three areas that Mitch had pointed out. So in the morning, price was here. We did expect price to come back in within this region. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And remember that this was the aggressive area. So price broke and held to the downside of this region. So unfortunately, there wasn't really nothing or anything much you could do about it. So price came down, bounced off here. The buyers seem to have showed up, but you can't see that they still ended up getting held hostage within this region right here. So for this one, we've adjusted the levels accordingly. So these are the three areas we will be trying to see whether we can get our trades in, and also areas where we can manage our trades. So the buyers have showed up, some sort of a resistance region within here, but we generally need to clear off this area here. So that's the reason why we have this level just slightly higher. If we could get something like this, whereby the buyers do actually end up showing up, we get that retest, some sort of a pullback back within here, then I think we could potentially end up getting some very good buying opportunities on this one. So let's see what happens on that one, on that front. Alternatively, what could also happen is that the market can also come back in within this area. If that does end up happening, then we could end up getting some aggressive buying opportunities still off this region right here, but you will have to manage your trade somewhere within this region, even if you will be targeting areas much, much higher. So hopefully you have taken note of that and everything we've discussed on the AUD pairs. So right now we're going to move on to the next set of currency pairs, which are the Euro pairs. And we're going to mix and match them up with everything on the sell side. So we'll start off with the Euro against the Swiss franc. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. So price was high up here. We're expecting to see maybe a slowdown within there or somewhere within this region here. But like I pointed out, there were some CPIs that came out for the CHF, and I think that did end up playing a big part in terms of the pullbacks that did end up happening. And of course, you can see that the market attempted to hold here, but we just couldn't get a proper hold. It breached to the downside. And of course, unfortunately, there were no buying opportunities on this one per se. So for this one for today, the market seems to have done some sort of a turnaround at the bottom right there. Let's see if these buyers who started to come in within this region, either if they can end up taking out this region to the upside, because you can see that the sellers are actually sitting somewhere within this region here. If we can't get them breaching and taking out these sellers, I think on the other side of this region right here, we could get some good buys. But generally within this area, we need to give the sellers the benefit of doubt, because they could easily react and you could find the market back within this region here. If that does end up being the case, it's just a matter of watching out for the times. If the market is back within here, maybe during the London or the US market open, then at least we could get some aggressive buying opportunities. So for this one, patience is key, but remember that if the market breaks and holds beneath the red SNR, then unfortunately at that point in time, there will be no trade for us. So the next one, this is the Euro against the Japanese yen. So for this one yesterday, we were trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. So you can see what the game plan was. Price was somewhere there. We're expecting either a breach to the upside or the market to pull back in within here. The market did pull back, but unfortunately there wasn't much to tell us to look for buying opportunities. But there was also this region that Mitch had pointed out, whereby you could have potentially found the market holding within here. And you can see that the market is in some sort of a range within these two regions right here. It also did just tap in back within this area right here as well. So for this one, the game plan is the same. So the levels are the same. The price hasn't gone fine beyond the regions that had been pointed out yesterday. So we'll be trying to see whether we can get some proper buying opportunities happening. So these are the three or more or less four areas that we will be watching out for. Right now, we're within some sort of a support region. So it's just a matter of waiting to see if we can get the big boys showing up. I mean, if you're really good at reading the story, especially on the smaller time frame, you could easily end up getting a buy coming up off this region right here to the upside. We're looking at about 54, nearly 55 pips. So not too bad, depending on if you can actually end up getting a proper stop loss in within this region here. But if that doesn't end up being the case, or that doesn't end up happening, then we'll have to wait and see if we can get the market maybe coming back in within this area right here. And you could find that maybe more sellers need to be invited before the buyers can actually end up pushing the market to the upside. So if price does end up coming back in within this area, I think we might get some very, very good buying opportunities then. So watch out for that. But also remember that you can also watch out for buys within here. The market breaks and holds above this region to the upside, then at least you can get some semi-aggressive conservative entries within that region there. So the next one, this is the Euro against the US dollar. So for this one yesterday, we're also trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. So you can see what the three areas were and what the game plan was. So in the morning, price was here. And you can see that during the London market open, price was within a seller's region. a region of resistance, came down, and you can see that at 5:30 during the US session, that's when the market did actually end up coming back in within a buyer's region, and it took off to the upside quite well. But you can see that still within this area, the sellers did push the market quite aggressively, but at least the buyers and the big boys had really showed up, and you can see that the market did actually continue moving to the upside. So for this one for today, these are the three areas we will be watching out for. So hopefully you can end up taking note of them. Let's see if we can get a proper pullback coming in. Right now, you can see that the market has found some sort of a resistance area there. The sellers are starting to push the market to the downside. Let's see if they can get the market coming back in as close as possible within this region here. And at least if we do get the prices, I think somewhere as close as possible within this SNR here, I think we could end up getting some very, very good buying opportunities. So make sure that you do watch out for that. But in terms of looking for the buys when the market is high up within there, might not really be good because you'll really struggle in terms of getting a proper risk to reward because the SNR at the top still remains regardless. So it's better to get the buys much, much lower so that at least you have more range to the upside. If that doesn't end up happening, instead of squeezing yourself here, you're better off waiting to see if you can actually get the market breaking to the upside of this area, and on the pullback, at least you could end up getting a very good buying opportunity. So watch out for that. And also remember to watch out for the times, like we do keep on pointing out. So moving on into the next one, which is the euro against the Canadian dollar. So for this one yesterday, we were also trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. You can see the three areas right there that Mitch had pointed out. So in the morning, price was here. It was either the market to break to the upside, which it did attempt, but unfortunately couldn't sustain above that region, or maybe the market actually coming down back within this area. And you can see that the market went to the upside. Then after that, you can see that the sellers did actually end up unleashing hell on the buyers who are stepping up within their region. And you can see that when the market came back within this area here, there was a lot of struggle and a big fight that was going on. And even at one point in time, the market did actually end up going lower, to tap the red SNR at the bottom. So for this one, for today, let's see whether we can get some clear buying opportunities. This one was a bit tricky in as much as you can see that the market did actually end up moving to the downside and then came back up quite aggressively. Could have been a bit tricky to end up grabbing that one. Let's see if we can get something much, much more clearer. So in as much as the market did actually end up moving a lot, but it's still more or less contained within the same regions that we did end up watching out for yesterday. So the game plan does end up remaining. Let's see if we can either get the market either breaking above this region to the upside. If we do get a pullback within this region, I think we could get some proper buys there. But also you can find the market coming back in within this region. And of course, if that does end up happening and maybe we do see a slowdown of the sellers, the big boy buyers showing up down within that region, then at least we could attempt some aggressive buying opportunities to move to the upside. So let's see what happens on this one. Remember the red SNR. In case the market breaks and holds to the downside of that region, then unfortunately there will be no trade for us. So moving on into the next set of currency pairs, which are the Great British Pound pairs. And we're going to do the same, mix and match them up with everything on the sell side. So we'll start off with the Great British Pound against the Swiss franc. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities as well. So you can see the three areas that Mitch had pointed out. In the morning, price was here. The market had just broken to the upside. Wanted to see what was going to happen if price was going to sustain to the upside of this region. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And you can see that the sellers came down. And I mean, it's something similar to what we've seen with the rest of the CHFs. Price came down aggressively. There was really nothing here to tell us to look for the buying opportunities. And you can see that the market even came down a bit lower, just came shy of this area here. Some sort of a turnaround started to happen within this area. You can see the fight that was going on. And today during the Asian session, it seems that the buyers potentially maybe could be interested. At least price has come back in. It's holding above this red, this semi-aggressive region, the yellow SNR in the middle. So we'll be waiting to see what does end up happening. Hopefully we can get the market just giving us another pullback. If we could just get maybe one last pullback coming back in within this area here, I think potentially we could get some very, very good buying opportunities within this area here. So at least when the market comes back within this price, at least even if we do get issues within there, you can easily end up managing your trade. So let's see what happens on this one. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed. There's definitely some sort of an SNR here. I wouldn't really advise you to look for the buying opportunities now. Personally, I wouldn't. I would possibly end up either waiting for price to break above here to the upside and maybe end up attempting some sort of a small buy coming up, maybe till somewhere within this region here. So let's see if we can end up getting that to happen. And also remember the region at the bottom. There's also a possibility price can also come back in within that area. If it does, then also make sure that you're ready for that. So the next GBP pair is the Great British Pound against the Japanese yen. So for this one, yesterday, we were also trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. The buys were not very clear, but you can't see that in the morning price was here. We're expecting maybe to get the market coming back within here. You can see what Mitch had illustrated. Price came back in, but it's like the sellers came down quite aggressively. The market struggled to hold above this region. You can see that sometimes it was to the upside, sometimes to the downside, but there was also this area that he had pointed out that potentially you could find the market maybe just tapping within that region. Then you can see that in as much as price didn't come back in all the way down within here, this price was more or less good enough. And you can see that the big boys showed up. Then the sellers really struggled. They tapped back within this region and the buyers still showed up once again. So right now we're in some sort of a range within here, but it also seems that sometimes the market is holding to the upside of this region, sometimes to the downside. So there's still a fight that's really still going on within this particular region right here. So what we will be waiting for is at least if we can get either the market breaking above this region to the upside and we get a hold, because you can see that every time the market breaks above, it doesn't really end up holding much to the upside of that region. So it's sometimes to the upside, sometimes to the downside. But I guess if you do get the buys here, you will also need to watch out for this region right here. And I think I can also end up pointing that out because if you are to also put this level somewhere within here, this is a major SNR. That's the reason why we have that there. But if you are to look at this structure right here of what's going on, you can definitely see that the buyers are somewhere here and the sellers are somewhere here. So if you want a much clearer buy and maybe one that's not really going to give you much issues, then you can also end up waiting for the market to break above this region to the upside. If we get a breach of structure and the market is out of that range, I think there could be some very good buying opportunities within here. And I guess that buy will possibly end up giving you much, much lesser issues. So let's see what happens. Also remember that the market can end up coming in lower. I mean, it can bounce off that region. Maybe if more sellers need to be invited, and if maybe too many people are thinking buy at this point in time, quite a number do need to end up getting stopped out. So you could find that the market might actually end up coming in, pulling back. As it pulls back, more guys start to jump in on the sells. As they're jumping in on the sells, maybe the big boys and the big buyers who are sitting within here, maybe those are what the buyers might actually end up needing to actually end up getting the job done. So let's wait and see what happens on this one. But ideally, those are the scenarios of what we will be watching out for. And also remembering the red SNR. Of course, if price breaks and holds beneath that region to the downside, then there will be no trade for us. So the next one, this is the Great British Pound against the US dollar. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could get some buying opportunities. These are the three areas Mitch had pointed out, and you can see also an illustration of what to expect. So expecting some pullback to come in, just came shy of this area, but I guess these prices somewhere within here were good enough, and you can see that the market really took off to the upside. But this one, I think, has a lot to do with the USDs showing a lot of weakness. And that's the reason why, of all the GBPs that we've looked at, this one is the one that has really moved. And I mean, you will end up seeing a lot of big moves on the rest of the USDs that we've looked at, and also the indices and the commodities. So for this one, let's see if we can get a pullback. If we did get a buy when price was down here, that's good. Just need to keep managing. But in terms of looking for the buys now, it might not really be that great of an idea. So it's better to either wait for the market to break above on the pullback. We could get the market giving us a buy within there, but there's a high likelihood we could get the market just coming back in within this area. But we do need to see a nice slow pullback that we can read. And hopefully we get some good buying opportunities within this area here. So hopefully you can end up taking note of that. But also remember the red SNR. There is a slight possibility price can also come back in within there. If it does, then I guess we also need to be ready for that as well. So moving on into the next and the last Great British Pound pair. This is the Great British Pound against the Canadian dollar. So for this one, yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. So you can't really see what the three areas were. In the morning, price was here. It was either the market to break to the upside, which it did actually end up breaking. But when it pulled back within here, you can see the struggle that was really happening within this particular region. A bit of a mess was going on. The bars went up, pulled back in within this region here. Once again, the bars showed up, and you can see that right now the sellers have really slowed down. If you compare the way they came down off this region here the previous time with this aggressive push coming down and what's happening right now, we can generally see that there's a slowdown, which is good, and it's definitely what we want to see. So let's see if they can push the market somewhere as close as that price as they can get. And I think some very, very good buying opportunities might actually end up happening off that region there. So let's keep our eyes locked on this area. They're coming in nice and slow, which is good. So hopefully they do completely run out of steam within this area, and the big boys, if they do end up showing up within there, then I think we could get some very, very good buying opportunities within this semi-aggressive conservative region. So watch out for that. Also watch out for the region at the bottom. There's also a possibility if the big boys do need that price, the market can come back in all the way till there. In as much as it seems like a very slim chance, but it's better to keep that option open, but also remembering that that's going to be the last area where we will be watching out for aggressive buying opportunities. So hopefully you've taken note of all those GBP pairs that we have discussed. So we can end up moving on to the last set of currency pairs on our watch list, which are the NZD pairs. So these ones are more or less new to our watch list this morning. So we'll start off with the New Zealand dollar against the Swiss franc. So for this one, we're going to be watching out to see whether we can get buying opportunities. So these are the three areas that we've mapped out, where we're going to be potentially trying to see whether we can get our trades in, and also areas where we can manage our trades. If you look at what happened yesterday on this one, just like the rest of the CHFs, I think there's some very good correlation that's happening amongst the CHF pairs, because yesterday, in the morning from around 10, when the CPIs came out, just like we've seen with the rest of the CHFs, the market did actually end up coming down quite aggressively. But also you can see that even on the rest of the CHFs, most of them have actually started moving to the upside. So maybe this was just maybe a push to maybe end up inciting many people to also jump into the market. Because also when you look at the CHFs, quite a number of them have actually been going up. So I guess those pullbacks that did end up coming in, maybe some sort of a stop out, but you can see that this one is back, came back in within some sort of a buyer's region. It's heading north, maybe back to the top of the range. So definitely with some sort of a range that's going on this one. But at least in terms of looking for the buys here, might actually not be too bad. So let's see if we can get the market giving us something within this area here. If we get that pullback and maybe a hold within there, I think we might get a good buying opportunity on this one. So let's see what happens. Remember the region at the bottom. It's a bit of a long shot, but also, just like we've looked at on the bigger time frame, that being a range, if it breaks beneath that region to the downside, then we're definitely out of the range, out of the structure. So there's definitely no point looking for the buys at that point in time. So moving on into the next one, this is the New Zealand dollar against the Japanese yen. So this is also a new entrant on our watch list. We will be watching out to see whether we can get some buying opportunities on this one. So these are the three areas that we're going to be watching out for. So you can see the market has come in within that region quite aggressively, but the sellers have also reacted quite aggressively off that area. So it's either the market goes up, and hopefully these buyers can actually push the market again. And if those sellers do end up slowing down and we get the market holding above this region to the upside, I think we could potentially end up getting some very, very good buys of that region there. But right now, based on the way the sellers are coming in, we don't know how far they could go. So if the price comes back within this aggressive region at the bottom, then I guess we could try and see whether we could get some aggressive entries within there. So let's wait and see what happens on this one. And of course, remember to watch out for correlation. If you're seeing something moving on one, try to figure out if it's the NZDs or is it the yens, so that if you do jump in on a trade, at least you'll know what's going to be carrying your trade. So the next one, this is the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar. So for this one, this is also a new entrant on our watch list. So we'll be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities. You can see the strength on the NZD coming in right from yesterday during the US session, today during the Asian session, continued to rally up a bit higher. But we will be waiting to see whether we can either get the market breaking above this region to the upside. If it does, then we could look for the buys then. If not, then it's better to wait, because you never know if the market could actually end up pulling back. This region right here in the middle is an area of interest. And you can see that the market did actually break to the upside. There wasn't much of a retest back within here, and that level is definitely visible, even to the the bigger boys on the bigger time frames. So you could find that there's a possibility price may just come back in within here for some sort of a retest. If that does happen, I think the best buying opportunities are definitely somewhere within this region right here. So make sure that you watch out for that. There's a possibility you could also find that during the London session, the market could be on the pullback. Then at around 4 or 5:30, that's when the market might actually end up being ready to actually end up lifting to the upside. So let's just wait and see what does end up happening on that one. But it's not too bad, if I do say so. So last but not least, for the currency pairs, we do have the New Zealand dollar against the Canadian dollar. So for this one, also a new entrant on our watch list. We will be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities. So this one is almost similar to some extent to the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar. But you can see this one also, the strength started to come in yesterday. You can see that from around midnight, when those NZD news events came out, the market continued to rally up higher. Consider the sellers have reacted off here. It's not unusual, because you definitely can see that there's a seller's region there. But let's see how far the sellers can actually end up pushing the market. If it comes back in within here, I think there could potentially end up being some very good buys within here. If that doesn't end up happening, then we'll have to wait and see if we can get the market potentially breaking above this region to the upside. Any buys within here would be a bit risky, and it might actually end up being a bit of a chase in terms of getting those trades. You're better off either getting the buys on this other side, because also on the other hand, we could have the level here, but maybe through SNR to some extent, it might actually end up being somewhere within this region, and maybe these might just be probes and spikes to the upside. So by hitting the buys there, you're definitely hitting the buys within some region where we do have sellers who can easily end up reacting on you quite fast. So let's see what happens on this one. Remember the red SNR at the bottom. Of course, in case the market finds its way down within that region, then it's just a matter of waiting to see what happens. If the story does end up aligning and we get some good price action signals within there, then potentially we can also end up getting some buys off there. So that's pretty much it in terms of all the currency pairs. So hopefully you have taken note of that. So right now we're going to move on to the indices and the commodities. You can see that there isn't much of a change on that front. So we'll start off with the NAS 100. So for this one, yesterday we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. You can see the three areas that Mitch had pointed out, and there was also this level that he had also put there, just in case the market finds its way back within this region here. But unfortunately, the market just came shy of that area. You can see that this region here was more or less good enough for the buyers. The market came in, pushed to the upside, technically almost held within there, went up and still pulled back in, somehow back within this area before continuing to move to the upside. So for this one, let's see if the market will continue to make higher highs and higher lows. In terms of looking for buys now, might not really be the best of ideas, because that's going to be a chase. At least if we can get the market pulling back, at least on the pullback, I think potentially we could get some good buying opportunities. There's a possibility price might just come back in within this region. If it does, I think we could get some very good buys there, because it seems that the market is on some sort of an upward trend. You can see that it breaks a level, pulls back, same case within here. So the fact that it broke this region to the upside, there's a high probability price might just come back in within this area. So I'm thinking the best buys might actually be somewhere within that region there. So let's see what happens on this one. Remember, we're looking for buys for as long as we're holding above this region to the upside. Maybe some of you may be wondering, why is this level hanging? The reason why we have that level hanging just above where the price is because if you look at the story of the bigger time frame, remember that in as much as we're trading the 15-minute time frame, we derive the story from the bigger time frames as well. So for this one, you can't see the high. That's where the sellers had actually pushed the market to the downside, and this was back in December. So maybe price might actually be heading somewhere within that region. So at least if we do get the buys somewhere within this area, and of course, this is where we do have our eyes locked, then at least coming up, even if price doesn't get all the way till within here, although we're really expecting to see price hit that level, then at least you could also end up managing your trade within this region. Because right now, I mean, as price is coming up, this is the high that we can visually see. So just make sure that you also do end up having that in mind. But in terms of looking for the buys, you're better off looking for the buys if we do clear this region to the upside. Let's say we don't get the pullback. Any buys that you do end up looking for, especially when price is within this region, you're more or less in some sort of a kill zone. So I would suggest you possibly don't end up looking for those buys within that area there. So let's see what happens on this one. And of course, hopefully we do get that pullback. I really do hope it comes in, but if it doesn't, then I guess we'll just have to end up seeing whether we can get the opportunities higher. And if not, there are so many other things we can end up looking at. So we don't really need to force any opportunities on any particular currency pair or commodity or index. So moving on into the next one, this is the US 30. So for this one yesterday, we were trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. You can't see the three areas that Mitch had pointed out. So in the morning, price was here. We're expecting the pullback to come back within this region. Price came down, bounced off there, came up a bit higher, just tapped within that region. You can see there were some attempts by the sellers to really come down. But unfortunately, the sellers were not really interested. You can really see the sign of the struggle that was happening within there, even with those weeks to the downside, quite a number of them. And then eventually the market did actually break to the upside, came up higher. So for this one, we're still going to be trying to see whether we can get selling opportunities. But remember that for the indices and the commodities, we go by what the story of price is telling us. We're fully technical. So the reason why we're looking for sales still is because we're within this sellers, what we call a seller zone. So you can see that this seller right here is still more or less in control. So when the market breaks and holds above this region to the upside, that's when we'll start to look for the buying opportunities. So it doesn't mean that you can't look for the buys, just don't be too overly confident with them, because the sellers can also easily end up showing up, especially when you're holding within this region right here. But at least if the market breaks to the upside and we do visually see that those sellers have been taken out, maybe even some attempts, to push the market to the downside, those buying opportunities that you end up getting on the upper side of that level, you can actually end up taking them a bit more confidently. So for this one, it's all going to be determined by what happens. But right now, also on the other hand, you can't see that this seller is also quite a big seller. So you could find that the market could actually attempt to break to the upside. And you can see that the buyers are really stepping up within this region quite aggressively. If they do end up attempting to break to the upside and it's unsuccessful, and the market actually comes back and holds to the downside of this region, then at that point in time, we can actually end up continuing to look for selling opportunities. So if we do get something like that, so the red SNR is more or less what we call the line in the sand. So it's going to be our main determining factor. So let's see what happens on this one. Of course, we do need to see a slowdown of the buyers. It's starting to happen if you're going to be looking for sales here. But also remember, that's only one part of the story. You also need to see the aggressive sellers showing up, before you actually do end up jumping in on those selling opportunities. So moving on into the second last thing that we look at, which is silver. Now for silver, yesterday the bars was to try to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. You can't see the three areas right there that Mitch had pointed out. So in the morning, price was here. It was either price to break above this region to the upside and come back in and give us some sort of a trade within there. If not, maybe price coming back in somewhere as close as possible within here for the buys. So you can see that price just came back in, tapped within this region. This was almost, I think, during the New York Stock Exchange open. After that, the buyers started to push the market to the upside. You can see the sequence of higher highs and higher lows, even reaching this region to the upside. Although this one was much earlier today during the Asian session. So the market broke to the upside, gave some sort of a pullback still back within this region here. You can see that the market has really gone to the upside quite aggressively. So for this one for today, the bias is still to try see whether we can get some buying opportunities. So we had set these levels earlier today, and it seems that price has already gone to the upside, but not quite too far, because we're more or less still within this seller's area right here. We do zoom in, you will see, and this is on the 1 hour time frame. So I guess the price is just challenging these sellers within this area right here. We had the SNR somewhere within this region here. But I think we can also end up adjusting that just slightly, maybe somewhere within that area, just to factor in, the probes and the spikes through SNR within that region. So for this one, back to the 15-minute time frame, I think the best area to look for the buying opportunities will be if the market pulls back in within this area here, and we do see, a struggle. Maybe the sellers are attempting to push the market to the downside, and the buyers are actually able to sustain price to the upside. I think at that point in time, we could actually end up looking for conservative buying opportunities. But also remember that these buys at the top right there, there's a possibility they will end up costing you. The reason why I say that is because the buys are also quite obvious right now. Everyone is definitely thinking of a buy on silver. It's so obvious. So you could find that there's a possibility these sellers might also end up reacting. And if they do, and let's say we get the market holding to the downside of this area, we could find the market just coming back in within this region. And of course, if we do see the slowdown of the sellers and the big buyers showing up within this region, I think we could get a buying opportunity happening maybe down within this area. And of course, when the pullback happens, very many people are going to be incited to start looking for sales. Many of them are going to stop jumping in on the buys, especially when they do get stopped out, especially if the deep pullback does end up coming in. So let's see what happens on this one. But like I pointed out, you could get the conservative entries at the top, but you also need to be very careful with those ones. Like I pointed out, it's very, very obvious that, it's a buy right now. The whole world can definitely see it. Remember that you're not the only one who's seeing that chart. Very many people can actually see it worldwide. So moving on into the last thing, which is gold. So for gold, yesterday the buyers was to try to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. So you can see the three regions right there that Mitch had pointed out. So in the morning, price was here. We're expecting maybe some sort of a pullback to come in within this region. You can see that during the London session, the market pulled back, but the buyers just didn't quite react quite well like would have wanted. And you can see that during the US session, the market came back in within this region, and you can see a bit more of an aggressive reaction to the upside. And you can see that also for this one, the market has continued to move up a bit higher, but not as much as silver. So for this one, the levels are the same. When we had them in the morning, I think price was somewhere within here, but it just seems like it just bounced off this region to the upside. We'll have a look at the bigger time frame to end up seeing where maybe price might potentially be heading. But at least you can see that the market has bounced off here. At least if we do get the market maybe still coming back in within here, because it can, I think we still can end up getting some buying opportunities within this area. And of course, if it comes back in within this top SNR, there's a possibility it might just end up going lower, maybe even tapping within these regions. And of course, when that happens and the price comes back to the upside, maybe we could get a very, very good buying opportunity. So watch out for that. Also watch out for these two other regions here. Remember that for as long as we're holding above the red SNR, the buyers should be to try to see whether we can get some buying opportunities. This one looks like it's heading back to the top. Remember that this was, I think, the highest price gold has been, and this was, I think, 3 days ago or so. So price tapped there. You can see that the sellers reacted. So right now, in terms of looking for the buys here, you're better off either waiting for the pullback here. In terms of looking for the buys there, maybe unless we get the market breaking and holding above this region to the upside. If that does end up happening, and let's say that weakness on the USD continues to show, if we get the pullback coming back within here, I think that could potentially end up being your next buy. But the only problem with that is that you don't really have much of a reference point to the upside in terms of where you're heading. So that means that your money management needs to be very, very good. When the market starts to move up, make sure that you really do keep moving your stop losses higher and higher, because you don't really know where the market is heading past that. Some people are saying that gold could be going all the way till 3,000. We'll see. Of course, it's pure speculation, but there is a possibility it can actually end up going all the way till there. We are so close to that price. Just a couple more pips, and I think we should be there. So let's see what does end up happening on that front. So hopefully you have ended up taking note of that and everything else that we have ended up discussing here. So looking at the chat box, I'm seeing Doba Africa. Good to see you there. And you're asking, so when is the best time to manage a Frankfurt trade, London or US Open? Well, for any trade, regardless of what time you end up taking it, it's always best to end up managing your trade when the market actually starts to make a move. So, like, for example, and the reason why I'm saying that it doesn't really matter in terms of the timing, it's the story. So let's say if you get the market going up, let's say you got a buy down here, the market starts to move up, then maybe comes down. Then after that, every time the market makes a new high, you can see like for this particular scenario, the price is high up within here. If you had gotten the buy here, then when the price is high up here, your stop loss needs to be here, and so on and so forth. And you just keep up with that story, constantly having your stop losses behind the buyers who are pushing up. In terms of the sells, the inverse is true. So let's say if you get a sell here and the market comes down, when it pulls back and continues to make a low, then that's when you can actually end up bringing your stop loss somewhere within there, because you're technically hiding behind this trader, this buyer or big boy right there who's actually pushing the market. And you just need to just keep up with that, either going up or going down. The reason why I'm pointing out that you need to wait for the market to first end up making a move is because sometimes I've been caught up in such kind of scenarios before. I mean, even when I was learning how to manage trades properly, you get a trade in here. The moment the market starts to make a move, immediately you put your stop loss within here, and then the market just comes back to your entry, stops you out, and then makes a move. So that's the reason why I'm pointing out that when the market now starts to make that sequence of higher highs and higher lows, regardless of whatever time you ended up getting the trade, right? Sorry. Whatever time you ended up getting the trade, whether it's during the London session, the Frankfurt session, it's all dependent on the story and when the market starts to make a move. So I hope that does end up sorting out your question, but that's a very, very good question. So I'm not seeing any more questions, which is perfectly fine. I guess everything else is clear. Once again, the watch list is there. I want to thank you all for making the time to be here with us today. And of course, this week, it's been an incredible week on the charts. Hopefully today, things are going to be good this Valentine's Day. Hopefully the charts are going to be showing us some love, and hopefully the charts are going to be friendly. But remember, no matter what you do, make sure that you stick to your risk parameters. And also, by the way, on the fundamental front, quite a number of news events that are going to be coming out today, but more so, especially during the US session. So you can see number of USDs, you can see a number of 3 stars there, 2 stars. So I guess we will also end up getting a lot of moves happening on the USDs. So of course, gold, silver, the US 30 and the NAS 100 as well. So just make sure that you watch out for that. You can see a card news event right there also in the midst of all that, those news events that are coming out, and also some CHF PPIs that are going to be coming out in a bit. So we'll have to wait and see what does end up happening. So hopefully you do have a wonderful day on the charts and in everything that you end up doing, and also do have a lovely weekend. Hopefully we'll see you guys on Monday morning. If you do get any good trades or bad, doesn't really matter. Feel free to send them in to us. We'd be more than happy to showcase them, or more so give you the much needed feedback. Because on Monday we don't really showcase, but at least we'll give you the feedback on our WhatsApp line. So happy trading, guys, and bye for now. God bless, and may the peeps be with you.